All right. Welcome to the joint committee meeting. We have joint committees between the joint minerals and the joint appropriations. So it's the joint squared. Appreciate everyone being here on a Friday morning. We've got some things we want to go over together between the two groups because we've been working on parallel paths on some of these issues and some of these bills, and we want to see if we can narrow down the differences between those parallel paths. So Heather, would you call the roll, please?
Senator Cooper?
Here.
Senator Jones?
Excused.
Senator Nethercott?
Here.
Senator Rothfuss?
Excused.
Representative Campbell?
Here.
Representative Knapp?
Here.
Representative Larson?
Excused.
Representative Lawley?
Excused.
Representative Riggins?
Here.
Representative Schmidt?
Here.
Oh, he's here. Excuse me.
Representative Tarver?
Excused.
Representative Weber?
Here.
Co-Chairman Anderson?
Here.
Co-Chairman Heiner?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Oh.
We need to do.
Chairman Heiner, for the Joint Appropriations Committee.
Yes.
Senator Driscoll,
Excused.
Senator French,
Here.
Senator Guru, Senator Larson,
Here.
Representative Alleman,
Present.
Representative Angelis, Representative Haroldson,
Here.
Representative Pendergraph,
Here.
Representative Sherwood, Representative Smith,
Here.
Co-Chairman Bear,
Here.
Co-Chairman Salazar.
Here.
JAC has a quorum.
All right. Thank you very much. So we have a quorum. We're going to begin by the working and hearing about the consensus grant program. We have two bills, one from each committee. So we'll turn it over to LSO office to give us an overview of the differences between those two bills.
Okay, yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the committees. So two drafts before you are 27 LSO 41 draft 0.8. This is 2-01 in the online meeting materials for today's meeting. This is the County Consensus Funding Program, the Joint Appropriations Committee's version of the bill. 27 LSO 20 draft 0.7 is 2-02 in the online meeting materials. And this is a draft consensus block grant local funding program that the Joint Minerals Committee voted to sponsor yesterday at its meeting. Mr. Chairman, I'll just highlight the primary differences between the bill. The actions of the Joint Minerals Committee yesterday brought several items into alignment with the Joint Appropriations version of the bill. So I'll just start in 27 LSO 20. There are two definitions that are in the minerals version of the bill that are not in the JAC version of the bill. One for the consensus list, and then most notably on page 3, line 16 of draft 20, there is a definition of local government entity. And the committee's direction yesterday was, instead of just broadly referring to special districts as an eligible recipient of the consensus funds, it is limited only to those local government entities with authority under Wyoming law to levy an ad valorem tax. So those would be the entities in the minerals version that, in addition to counties, cities, and towns, which are equivalent in both drafts, that would be eligible for the consensus funding. The next primary difference is if the counties do not agree. This was, I believe, action that JAC took yesterday in working their version of the bill draft. For joint minerals, those funds would just become available to all counties in the following year. If for JAC, if the county cannot and the municipalities cannot agree in any given year, the funds would be retained in the account for that county for subsequent years. The uses are the same in both drafts: capital projects and major maintenance and repair, and those definitions are in alignment between both drafts. The approval process is virtually identical with the exception that JAC added the language about what happens if the counties do not agree. Generally, the counties would reach consensus, submit the list to the Office of State Lands and Investments, after which the funds would be distributed. And under both versions of the draft, no vote by the state loan or action for that matter by the State Loan and Investment Board would be needed. Then the next and probably biggest difference between the two drafts is the funding mechanism for the program. So the Joint Minerals Committee has funded the program for 2 fiscal years at $100 million for each fiscal year via a transfer from the Legislative Stabilization Reserve account. After that, it would be up to subsequent legislatures to determine the amount and source of funding for the county consensus program. For joint appropriations, for the next fiscal year, it would be the account would be funded via a reversion of all unexpended, unobligated funds in the Business Ready Communities account. That balance is approximately $83 million that would be transferred to the county consensus program. Then thereafter, funding for the program would come via some yet to be determined amount of severance taxes. And in draft 41, all of that language is demonstrated beginning on page 12 of that bill draft. There are figures primarily on page 12, line 13 would be the kind of that dollar amount that would need to be filled in. From thereafter, the percentages would reflect that dollar amount. Then, Mr. Chairman, and I explained this to the Joint Minerals Committee yesterday, the final difference I would note between the two items is what happens to unexpended funds. So for joint minerals, those funds could become available for a county-wide project, and they would just remain with the county until some subsequent action of the legislature. In the joint appropriations version of the bill, those funds would revert, if they're unexpended and obligated, they would revert after 4 years of award to the county. I turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Richards, if he has anything else to add. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Good morning, Mr. Richards.
Good morning, members of the committees. My name is Don Richards, Budget and Fiscal Administrator for the Legislative Service Office. The items that Mr. Fuller just explained are also available on a matrix form titled Comparison of County Consensus Funding Graphs. All of those items highlighted in green or green-blue indicate entire alignment between the two committees, meaning there is no differences. Those colored in white, you can see the differences primarily due to the size of the appropriation, the method of appropriation, and the reversions of those funds. In addition, just for illustrative purposes, there are two additional handouts, one in landscape form, one in profile form. In the color blue with the titles, the landscape version is the estimated amount distributed by county as resulting from the Joint Minerals Business and Economic Development Draft, LSO 20, Working Draft 0.7. You can see that $100 million would be distributed to those counties in the following manner. It is likely that these will be updated somewhat because we will have one additional year of estimated population next spring. In the profiled version, you can see the JAC version, and let me qualify this in that JAC has not concluded its final amount for appropriation, but they did vote on an amendment to revert all outstanding BRC money, which today is roughly $83 million. That could change. The Business Council has the ability to make grants between now and the session, so that number, it won't grow, but it could decline. And if that $83 million is the final resting point for the JAC position, you can see how that would be distributed among the counties. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, gentlemen. I am very impressed how two parallel paths, the commonality between the bills. there is much in common. And it just obviously shows that we all have similar concerns, and the outcome is very similar, what we're desiring to do for our counties and municipalities. So thank you very much, committee members, for your diligent effort in this. Let's open it up to questions from the committee.
Mr. Chairman.
Senator Nethercott.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the similarities in the bill drafts come from the direction that the drafts adopted came from the 2014 session laws. And so it originated from previous work of the legislature, and that's our starting point, the work of previous legislatures. From my perspective as a member of the Joint Minerals Committee, this has been a very confusing process. To know that the Appropriations Committee took the Management Council assigned topic and the statutorily appropriate topic and chose to simultaneously work these topics to bring us here together for an unusually joint meeting. The Joint Minerals Committee yesterday certainly identified the bill that they chose to adopt and move forward through the work of stakeholders and through the work throughout the interim. It's my understanding, and so some clarity from the chairman of the Appropriations Committee, that there's no intention to move any bills forward until October. And so just a conversation if we're supposed to debate these bills now amongst ourselves after the Joint Minerals Committee adopted a version of the bill to advance to the legislature, because the adoption of the bill wasn't to advance it to today for us to debate it. So just some further clarity from those that decided to ignore the directive of Management Council, ignore the statutory obligations and directions, and choose to bring us here today for this comparison. Will there be a vote by the Joint Appropriations Committee, or are we just going to wait until October?
Chairman Salazar.
Thank you. Good points. We were under such time constraint over the last 2 days with such a full schedule. We thought that rushing such an important topic was going to be difficult, especially since we did have another meeting scheduled for the Joint Appropriations Committee. But I'm more than willing to entertain what the body would like to do on this. So that's where we were at.
Okay, any other questions for LSO? Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just would like to address the comments of the good Majority Floor Leader of the Senate as well. I think today's value is in having a conversation of where the Joint Appropriations Committee should go in its completion of its bill as we move forward. I think that the things and the thoughts and the actions of the Joint Appropriations Committee should be explained to the Joint Minerals Committee, so that they can contemplate those things as their bill would move forward in the 69th. So I think it's a valuable opportunity for us to share how we came to the conclusions that we came to. And we have one piece of missing information in our bill, and that is the final number. Since our bill contemplates ongoing funding, it could very well be a different number than what the Joint Minerals Committee came up with a 2-year funding model. So that's what I think we should discuss today.
All right, thank you. And again, the similarities between the bills are amazing. The differences is mainly in the funding, and that's where we come together as joint committees, because the funding mechanism has to align with our Appropriations Committee and their work with the total government budget. And so that's something that we need to be in alignment with, and that's what this meeting is all about, is let's figure out how the funding mechanism can work, because this is a serious amount of money, and it's going to be utilized by our towns and communities and counties, and we want it to be something that can be ongoing if possible, if the finances of the state allow that. So it's important that we have the input from our Appropriations Committee as we tackle that larger realm of appropriations. Any other comments? Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too have been a bit confused about this process and what the Management Council directed each of us to do. Where we are, at least with this bill, I'm just talking about the consensus funding program. As an appropriator, I would like to hear the input of the Minerals Committee on what they view as appropriate, but that is a decision that is left to Appropriations. How it's set up, I think should be left to Minerals and Economic Development. So I don't have to speak twice and bother everyone when it comes to the other subject on the table with the Business Council. I agree the same thing, that the tactical pieces should come from Minerals and Economic Development, and then funding will come based on those recommendations. Funding will come from where it should come from, and that's the Appropriations Committee. So for now, I'd like to hear anyone's views on the committee's views on funding for this program, and be more than happy to take those into consideration when I vote on funding at a later date. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Director Richards, could you kind of give us, obviously we've got a 200 million LISRA appropriation on the mineral side bill, and then we're looking at it through severance tax. Can you kind of walk us through that conversation? Obviously two completely different views on funding model. Talk about historically the severance tax status, what that would look like, what this would actually mean to use this as a long-term funding model. Can you kind of just walk us through that, please?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
The Minerals Committee appropriation is coming from the LSRA, coming from savings. It's only for 2 years, but it really is not a biennium, because it would be the second year of the current biennium and the first year of the subsequent biennium. The severance tax mechanism that the Joint Appropriations Committee selected as its revenue source is ongoing, not technically subject to legislative appropriation each year. However, each legislature could change the statute to increase, decrease, or eliminate that amount. They selected an unspecified amount over the cap. The cap is $155 million of severance taxes. We have always hit the cap in the history since it's been implemented in 2001. At its essence, it would reduce the amount of money that was going to the general fund and increase money that would be available to local governments, and no other account would be impacted. Given the current state of finances, realistically, a reduction in the general fund, given the state of our current budget, is essentially the same as a reduction in the LSRA.
Follow up? Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Don, thank you for that. Historically, around what are we over that 155 cap?
Mr. Chairman, a couple of things just for your thinking about this. There are several streams of revenue that are not subject to the $155 million cap. Inclusive of that is the amount that goes to the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund and the 1% severance tax that is now for 1 year going to the Energy Dominance Fund, and thereafter being split between the Permanent Mineral Trust Fund and the Common School. So you take that out, and I would say a reasonable amount per year would be about $300-ish million in that capped portion. So 155 is the current cap, and then perhaps another 150 over that. Of course, this is contingent upon oil prices, coal production, and the like.
So, Mr. Chairman, just for
Yes,
some
Senator.
point of order due process here, are we going to vote? I mean, I heard my member of the Senate on the Appropriations Committee say that the job of the Appropriations Committee is to determine the amount of the appropriations and how that's funded. Absolutely agree, which is why our legislative process is that bills that have appropriations go to the Appropriations Committee after they've been vetted by a committee. So I'm just wondering, as a member of the Minerals Committee, if I'm now today going to be asked to vote on the manner and method of the appropriation, and if not, I appreciate the opportunity to hear history of the severance tax from our director here, but what are we doing today other than getting another presentation on the source of appropriations for the differences in the bill drafts? Are we doing it? Are we voting today? Am I voting on an appropriation as a member of the Minerals Committee? Just a question about that.
Chairman Bear.
What are we doing today?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In response to the good majority floor leader's question, I think the Joint Minerals Committee, which takes action on minerals bills, took action yesterday. Maybe a little premature, but it was your last day operating alone. So I understand why the Minerals Committee would take action on their bill. Had they waited till today, this could be a bit more of a debate and we could get the two bills in better alignment. But that is precluded by the vote yesterday. So now I think what we want to accomplish is just have a conversation and make sure that the JAC bill going forward has some input and I don't know, vetting from the Minerals Committee.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if I may, as with all of the bills currently being worked across the interim every year for the last 150 years that have appropriations, those bills are vetted by the Appropriations Committee at the appropriate time. I don't know why this bill is different, with the exception that the Appropriations Committee took up the topic itself in violation of Management Council and the statute. And so now we are here in this absurd process with really nothing to do but look at each other and discuss financing options, which is the purpose of the Appropriations Committee. So again, I ask as a member of the Senate Minerals Committee, what am I doing here this morning? And is this not a waste of the taxpayers' time?
Mr. Richards, as you have looked at the financing mechanism from the appropriations bill, joint appropriations bill, do you have an idea what the amount would be for the next few years that would go actually to the consensus block grant program? Just a guesstimate?
Mr. Chairman, I do not. And the reason for that is the committee did act to revert all outstanding funds, which are currently in the neighborhood of $83 million. But subsequent to that, they left that blank. So it would be entirely speculation on my part what they might do in October.
With the severance tax split, and there's no idea how much that would be.
Mr. Chairman, that's correct. They would need to set a number, and I think they left that for a future opportunity.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Chairman Baird.
Go ahead.
Senator Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm as a member of the Minerals Committee, I have to say that I'm offended by the intrusiveness and overstep of the JAC on this bill. I don't see any purpose of it. That bill belonged in minerals. That's where it was worked quite well yesterday. We vetted it completely. I feel like this whole proceeding today is a waste of time, a waste of taxpayers' money. And as such, I think I'm finished today. Thank you.
Safe travels. All right, Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I think as a courtesy to everyone, I think this is not a surprise to me, and the Senate does intend, the Senate Minerals Committee, to not participate today out of profound confusion as to what it is we intended to accomplish today. If the good chairman of House Appropriations didn't want the Minerals Committee to vote on a bill yesterday, perhaps that should have been communicated. I don't know why bills couldn't be adopted today and amended, but if we don't have, if that's precluded today, which of course it is not. But since that is the opinion of the Appropriations Committee, since this is completely out of order, since the Senate has passed and the Joint Minerals Committee has passed a bill that they have adopted, work through the interim, there's no purpose in moving forward today. I look forward, just like all the committee's interim bills, to go back and watch the testimony, read the materials, be prepared for the session to understand the rationale why those committees operated the way they did. We don't come together and have joint meetings every time different committees have topics that intersect with each other. This is an unusual course. It's an unproductive course. And I do believe the taxpayers have a better use of their time, including that of their elected officials. So the Senate Minerals Committee intends not to continue to participate today. We do appreciate the effort, but think it's totally out of order. So good day, committee. Good luck to you. We look forward to following up.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, if I may continue.
yes. Go ahead.
Thank you. So despite the interruption, I'll just continue stating that the directive from the Management Council was that JAC would work on the funding of both the Wyoming Business Council and the Consensus Community Grants. Minerals did take action on funding. So we're not taking offense at that, as the Minerals Committee seems, or portions of it seem to be offended, that we also worked on other portions of these actions. But we certainly would like the input of the Minerals Committee as we conclude what the number should be for funding of this program.
Thank you. Mr. Chairman, you have any comments?
No.
Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I think I want to realign into this conversation. So the truth of the matter is there's an amazing group of men and women here with a lot of experience, a lot of background, and a lot of opportunity to bring insight into this. Right now, we're talking about the funding for our municipalities and counties. That's incredibly important. We're talking about the future of the economics of our state, also incredibly important. I've had the opportunity and enjoyment to work with our Wyoming Business Council and see the work they're doing in our state. I've got more knowledge now than I've ever had on that, and I appreciate that. I am saddened that the sentiment is as it is. I think that it is in fact contrary to the best interests of the people of the state of Wyoming. Last year, as appropriations, we had the opportunity to take a deep dive into fire and wildfire prevention in the state of Wyoming. You could sit there and say, well, that was out of your lane because it wasn't directly having to do with money. Well, we have the bandwidth and the capability of being able to take a deep dive on a subject, which is what we're doing once again. And I believe that it is beneficial to the state for us to have that conversation and to have those more eyes looking at these topics. And so, as the good chairman stated, we've got two very similar conversations, two different funding models, of which in the end, we will make a decision as JAC. I think it's also important, though, as we look at it, where there are differences. There are differences in both this bill and the next bill that we're going to look at. Does it make one right or one wrong? No, but I believe it also makes the opportunity for us to look at it and have genuine, honest conversations of why we felt that was best. Is it a deal where someone's going to stand on a platform and say, this is how it has to be? No, I don't believe that. I believe that we can sharpen each other and find the best solution for the state of Wyoming as well as the agencies involved. And so with that, what I would like to see is I would like to see a dialogue and conversation regarding some of those differences, not just the money differences, but maybe the reversion differences, how we're actually seeing that move forward. And what our intention is with that. And as we move into the other bill draft, when it comes to some of the repealers with the Wyoming Business Council programs, we do have differences here. And I'd like to have conversation on those differences so that we can make sure that we're doing the best for the Wyoming Business Council, as well as the citizens of the state of Wyoming. And so that would be my request now that we are back in a position where we can continue this conversation. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, we spent a lot of time on this yesterday and came up with a bill that we thought was appropriate. And I would expect that the JAC would look at the dollars and see what they think about it. And I have every confidence in the JAC that they will move the dollars appropriately. So with that, I will leave this to the JAC. I don't intend on trying to influence JAC in any way. And I have every confidence that they will do their work and do a good job with it. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For my 2 cents, this is a huge opportunity for the state of Wyoming, for her counties, her towns, her municipalities to provide revenue to help with the infrastructure that is sorely needed throughout our state. This is a huge legacy that we're trying to develop that will be transformational for years to come for our state. It's an important piece of legislation. And by refusing to work together as a group, just creates more divisiveness. We have been sent to Cheyenne to work for the betterment of the great state of Wyoming. And there's 93 legislators that all should be working together to compartmentalize and say, this is your lane and don't come into our lane. That doesn't lead to the best outcome. The best outcome is to work as a team, regardless of what team you're on. That was the intent of this meeting today, was to work as a team for the common good of the state of Wyoming. Now, with some people walking away from that opportunity to work together, that does not promote the general welfare of our great state. And I'm disappointed in that. I'm disappointed that people that have taken the oath of office to fulfill the duty have walked away from that opportunity. Those of us that remain, we will continue. We will continue to do what we feel is best so that we can create a lasting legacy for our towns, municipalities, and counties, because this is very important. The consensus block grant program can be transformational for our state as our towns are struggling with infrastructure. So I would admonish that we work together, that we find an outcome that will be most successful in the next session with limited differences between the two committees so that it can go forward to the general session. Senator Guru.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe it's just because I'm old, I guess, but I don't offend as easily as I used to be. So I don't take too much in this one way or t'other, except this. When I started in this institution 10 years ago, I was told you do two things. You trust the process, and by doing so, you honor the institution. Today, what we're trying to do is deviate from a process that we have had in place and has worked very well for this state for 150 plus years. And so I wouldn't take too much umbrage when we deviate from that some people get their hackles up a bit about it. Once again, I'll say, our committee decided not to take a vote yesterday. We decided that at 8 a.m. That was first thing out of the box from our chairman, and it was his call. And as it was his call, as a member of the committee, as is the process, I said, okay, because that's what our chairman asked. And so the Committee of Minerals and Economic Development chose their route to do their work, to finish it and to get it done, and they're finished. As appropriators, now we have something to do. We've already decided that we were not going to vote on appropriations or decide on any of that stuff until our meeting in October. And so I don't think I feel fine. I understand if people want to stay here and have a conversation. I understand, but if we're not going to be taking votes, if we're not going to be taking actions, I can understand where some would say that maybe this is not the best use of their time. They can read the material, they can watch the meetings. I look forward to and was watching the Minerals Committee meeting after we adjourned and watching with great interest because a lot of the issues they were taking up are of great interest to me. We will all have an opportunity to debate what this committee did yesterday on the floor and in subsequent meetings. We'll also have a chance for everybody on the Minerals Committee to take a look at the appropriations that we do and weigh in on that. And so I frankly am fine. And at this time, I would make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded? Any, so there's not debatable. We'll have a vote. All those in favor of adjourning signify by saying aye. All those opposed signify by saying no. No.
No.
That motion has failed. Okay, any more discussion for LSO before we move to public comment? Representative Riggins?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just quickly, I noticed the difference in when the distribution would occur. Any story around that? I know why we put July 1st. That's just traditional, but you had a different date.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Riggins, correct. And this was a conforming amendment. The JAC members did not vote specifically on this. But once they moved the source of funding from an appropriation to severance taxes are collected on an accrual basis. So they're not complete until September and then would be distributed in October.
Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Want to address some of the comments and then I'll get into what Director Richards has shared with us. I think we did a conceptual amendment late yesterday. It was pretty rushed, as my co-chairman stated. So would like to clarify some of that for this committee. But as far as the conversation, 150 years of tradition, a lot of the things that we're going to be discussing today are being discussed out in the open in front of the public. I think that's important. Many times over the last 150 years, the kind of debates that lead to agreement amongst chambers and committees is done behind the scenes. And I think it's more important that we do this out in the open where our cities and towns can have some consistency as to what they know we're thinking, where we're headed, because this really does affect them, as the Speaker Pro Tem from the House just stated. So I think it's important that we do have this conversation out in the open, because I think that there's room for movement on both committees. My hope would be that the two bills either become very, very similar and move forward as mirror bills in two different chambers, or that simply one bill moves forward and there's agreement amongst these committees. And now is the beginning of that debate to try to find that agreement. So if this is a deviation from 150 years of tradition, I would say it's a good deviation, because now the public and our cities and towns and counties will have a much better idea of what the committee members are thinking as these bills move forward. Having said that, I want to correct the director, because this again was a conceptual amendment late yesterday with very little time to describe it. But what I was hoping for is that we would come to an agreement on a particular number. The Minerals Committee has come up with $100 million per year. I suspect that was anticipating only a 2-year span, and that if it were ongoing longer, that number might change. We obviously came up with a plan to fund this program for perpetuity, with the exception of a future legislature changing that. So that's part of the discussion that needs to happen. Is there a different number? Having said that, the conceptual amendment was taking the $83 million from the BRC program, which we determined that we were repealing that from the WBC because it's unlikely that both programs, the BRC program and the community consensus grants, would survive any long-term effort through the legislature when both programs are serving the exact same purpose, and yet funding is not always consistently there for two different programs that serve the same purpose. So we determined that one program would move forward. We determined that would be community consensus grants. Obviously, that was impacted by testimony from the cities, counties, and small towns. That was impactful, the testimony that we received. So we were prepared to move forward and are prepared to move forward with consensus community grants as the sole method of funding development within our communities of infrastructure and major maintenance as well. So having done that, we looked at long-term funding models. We proposed this one from severance tax. The 83 million in the conceptual amendment was intended to be the first seed money, if you will. Whatever number we chose as an ongoing funding could start in year one, and therefore let's just choose the $100 million for an example that the Minerals Committee chose. If it's $100 million and we have, for instance, 83 million from the BRC program, I would anticipate in the first year $17 million coming from severance tax that year. And in answer to your question, Mr. Chairman, what would this look like going forward? If it's 100 million, it's 100 million. If it's a different number, it is that different number. If it's 50 million and the BRC has 83, then there's 33 million that can carry over to year two. So that's really what needs to be discussed here today, in addition to whether Minerals Committee agrees with the elimination of the BRC program based on our conversation, our debate in the Joint Appropriations Committee of trying to narrow this down to one program to serve our cities, counties, and small towns. And I think my vice chair has a comment.
Representative Pendergraph.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to springboard on a couple of other items. If we're talking about the consensus grants or the BRC, they're both accomplishing essentially the same thing. I think the advantage of the consensus grants is that it moves the decisions down to the local municipalities, to the counties, and it takes it out of the hands of a central agency, say, for example, the Wyoming Business Council. So now it is a more local, closer to the people distribution. The other factor is that the need for this money far exceeds the cash that we have on hand. And so if you have a limited amount of funds to try to do a big job, why would it make sense to run two parallel programs and pay for administration twice over? Especially when one administration is central. So the other administrations, the counties, the cities, the municipalities, special districts, whatever gets included, they already have their administration set up. So then we can take that money that we would have used in a central way, distribute it, and it's going to go a lot farther. And I think that we need to bear that in mind as we look at this whole situation. Thank you for your time.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I very much do appreciate this opportunity. I think that it's our obligation as legislatures to discuss and debate in a public forum exactly what we're doing, and I think this is appropriate today. My question is, as far as funding, I would like to ask, if I may, why you chose severance tax as a funding model. Thank you.
Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was a little bit on the fly. I mean, there are other funding sources available, but this one is one, we had this debate in the last session when we discussed the Energy Dominance Fund and how these funds were available. Oftentimes, you know, this is the way these funds are distributed is on the second page of our data book, revenue flow charts. And it's been a very complicated thing, but few legislators are really cognizant of the opportunities here that are in this flow of funds from severance tax. And it's very consistent, as we've seen over the history of the severance tax collections above the 1.5%, which is constitutional. We have seen very consistent funds there available, and it already funds many portions of cities, towns, and counties. For instance, capital construction, water 1, 2, and 3, which go to our special districts. I mean, if you look at the second page, which is the severance tax distribution, here are the different things that happen underneath the cap, which is where we're putting it. 62.26% goes to the general fund. Water 1, 2, and 3 get 15.05%. Cities and towns get 9.25%. Highway fund gets 4.33%. Counties get 3.88%. County road construction fund gets 2.9%. And cities, towns, and counties capital construction gets a flat amount. I guess I'd have to expand that to get the percentage, whatever the remainder is. So putting the community consensus funding right in there in that same list, I think is appropriate. It just fits right in there with them. So it's already funding a lot of things for local governments. And we would increase the cap of 155 million to whatever number we choose as the consensus grant funding amount that would be added to the 155 million. So it would not impact any of those numbers that I just shared with you. And so I think it's an appropriate place to get it from. And the committee agreed with me on that. And so there's where we're at.
And from the conversations we had in the Joint Minerals Committee, the LISRA and the $100 million were placeholders because we recognized that the LISRA could not be a long-term ongoing cost that we would burden on the LISRA. We were hoping for more input from our JAC so that we could find long-term revenue source for this program. But as a Minerals Committee, we just wanted to get things kicked off and rely on the expertise of our appropriators. So question down here. Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One thing too, I think that's important to understand, what we didn't want to do, just as we had a discussion in direct distribution, the concern with direct distribution was the fact they couldn't actually place their hat on it because it was fluid, it moved. And we made the decision to make that more of a consistent. They didn't have to continually go, what's the legislature feeling this year, right? What's this biennium going to look like? Direct distribution got some stability and some foundational width, and we wanted this to be the same. We didn't want it to be a deal of, well, this is a great opportunity, but the first moment we're not doing great, it may not be there for you. We want there to be some consistency, and especially as you're going to do a better job as municipalities and counties as you're watching long-term, knowing, okay, this is going to need to be repaired or replaced. This is going to need to be expanded or brought out, and we can start planning the funding for that down the road. And so I think this is a way to, at least consistently, we've seen that this could be a way to put some stability in that funding source.
Any further comments? Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think now is a good time to talk about one of the other differences, and that difference is the reversions. If it was described to you all as if a community does not come to consensus, that is a possibility. It's never happened before in the history of this consensus program, and we don't anticipate that being an issue. But there's another reason to revert those funds that are not collected based on a lack of consensus application to remain in the account, if you will, for that community. And that is that If the community agrees to a very large program that is beyond what the funds are available for that particular year, we don't want them to be motivated to go ahead and collect those funds so they get reverted to other communities. And then it ends up in their account where they can't do what this program is designed to do, and that is allow the treasurer of the state of Wyoming to invest those funds while they're not obligated. So this would allow those funds to be continually invested until the community got to the volume of dollars in their account that they would go ahead and submit their application to retrieve those dollars for that large project. So there's a multitude of reasons to allow that money to stay in the account of that particular county versus if they don't come with their application in a particular year, divvying it out to the other communities. So that was another difference between our approach and the minerals approach.
Thank you, Chairman. Any other conversation? Representative Sherwood.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just want to go back to, there was a comment about these programs doing the same thing. And I want to offer some color to that because as it exists today, that isn't true. These programs do not do the same thing. We're talking about the Building Resilient Community Program, and we're talking about the Consensus Block Grant Program. Both are grants, so that is true. But the BRC program helps communities plan for growth on their terms. Currently, the consensus funds cannot be used for planning. So that's one difference. Another difference is the Building Resilience Community Program allows communities to build infrastructure, buildings that the municipality owns, but that can be leased to a private business. So in my community, that might look like helping our biotech industry grow. So that also generates revenue for that community. So if the city owns the asset, they're charging rent to the business that's growing, they're diversifying their funding source and becoming less reliant on taxpayer dollars. So currently the consensus grant funds can only be used to provide government or public services. That's a nuance there. Yes, we can continue to work the bill, we can add these things, we can pull from the programs, but just so the committee knows, as it exists today, in paper and in concept, the programs are not the same. And I would argue that there is both funding and a need for both, not one, but both. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative. Any further comments? Seeing none, thank you, gentlemen. We will open this up for public comment now. Anyone in the audience would like to come forward? There's a mad rush. And we have one front runners. Two front runners now. Whichever wants to go first, Jeremiah or Ashley.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I'm Jeremiah Riemann here on behalf of the Wyoming County Commissioners Association. Thought it was appropriate I come down. You've listed us on the agenda, and we're obviously the beneficiaries of this particular program. I don't think I need to belabor the value of reinstating this program, and I deeply appreciate both committees taking that up and looking at how you can invest in cities, towns, and counties and other entities that provide vital services in our local communities. I know we're working diligently to try and provide information to you all as this moves forward that supports the sort of investment that you've put forward. The Minerals Committee heard yesterday a little bit from my colleague Ashley about the water and sewer needs across the state. We've been working diligently to try and put together some road infrastructure numbers. It's pretty big, $500 million to $1 billion on just the county side of the equation, and that comes from the University of Wyoming, and we've shared that with the Transportation Committee. We'll do other work to support that. I don't want to belabor things, but would certainly be here as an available resource to you to answer any questions that you have as you continue to work this bill today and into the future.
Thank you, Mr. Raymond. Any questions? Yes. Representative Riggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Raymond. So when we were talking about the funding formula, right? So I think we need of almost a formula-driven model so we can anticipate maybe what the funding level, instead of negotiating this every 2 years. So what are your thoughts on that part of this bill?
Mr. Raymond.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, and Representative Riggins, I agree. I think this has to be a long-term investment, and that is because if you look at the numbers that even you have in front of you today, those may seem like big numbers for one entity, but when you begin to distribute them across a number of entities, they're going to have to stack those dollars for a number of years. So if the notion is that you're only going to have it for 2 years and then on a wish and prayer that the state is going to provide additional funding, you may not get to the investment that you really were trying to accomplish. So having a long-term funding source is helpful. And what I heard yesterday is the Appropriations Committee did identify a long-term source, but I also heard the Minerals Committee say, hey, this is where we're starting. We still intend to find the next part of that equation, and we'll work with you to do that. But I do think it's important to have a long-term investment.
Follow up.
So my colleague down there just mentioned planning. Well, when you're planning a water system and projects like that, I mean, I would think that this money is going to cover that planning process. I mean, if you just explain quickly what a sewer project is and the engineers that you hire and the company you hire to take care of that, that's part of the planning process. That is the planning process. And so I guess I would think it would be eligible. Explain if I'm wrong.
Mr. Raymond.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to ask my colleague. She's been working on the water and sewer side of the equation a lot more than I have this year, so.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Riggins, Ashley Harpstreet for the record with Wyoming Association of Municipalities, and I think I'm joined here too with a phone a friend with Beth Blackwell. I'm glad you're bringing up the strategy because I think that's extremely important in what's thoughtful about this legislation, and that needs to be continued to be deliberated in the planning of infrastructure strategy. Yes, some engineering costs, and Beth might have more of a fine point numbers on what those look like and cost, depending on, and I haven't looked at the most updated numbers yet, but depending on the community, some of those numbers are actually pretty expensive. I know we get in trouble a lot for what we have in our reserves, but specifically in some of our enterprise funds, we have to statutorily keep money in there, and then it takes us time to build up those reserves. And this would help, I think, when you have that strategy in place and you invest initially into planning correctly, of knowing, doing a patchwork quilt of funding of what they're building from their enterprise funds, and then grants and other opportunities out there along with help from the state. Because as we know, we're in an inverted situation of a business case with low population, and a sewer costs the same no matter if you're here or New York City. So as far as the actual numbers of planning grants, I'm not exactly sure. I know they start 50,000, up to $250,000. And I think, as you're looking at the future strategy for economic development for the state, strategy, we've said everything's got to be based in strategy, structure, funding, and accountability. And I know I haven't listened back to JAC yet, but I heard BRC is now off the table from your committee, which I could argue actually both ways on. But one thing that's concerning about BRC going away is the planning grants. So that might be something to consider. If you're taking that off the table, where does that maybe get plugged back into future structures?
Follow up. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ms. Harpstreet for being here and your comments. If you see that planning is not capable of being funded through the community consensus grants, I certainly want to hear that. We have time in JAC to correct that and would like to correct that. But I guess I would like to ask both of you this, my vice chairman talked about the centralized nature of the BRC program versus the local control that's really developed in the community consensus grants. But I'll just give you an example of one thing I've always seen as a flaw. Many times the BRC program would determine eligibility based on taxation. You know, have you maxed out your mills before you're available for this particular grant or not? And obviously, community consensus grants has no sort of hurdle to get over in that regard. And so communities can operate the way communities want to without those kinds of outside influences just to achieve the funding that they want to for these types of programs. Can you just opine on that difference that this program would provide?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman Bear, I will say that this topic actually came up in the Minerals Committee of whether there shouldn't be some consideration of whether an entity is imposing its full complement of mills or imposing other, special purpose, general purpose taxes. So I would say that still is a question yet to be determined in this conversation. As I shared with the Minerals Committee yesterday, I've been around the block a few times on these issues, and I've seen how this can work. I appreciate the sentiment. In fact, I will share maybe some examples in that regard. I was sharing with my wife last night. I serve as chair of the Outdoor Recreation and Tourism Trust that you all set up just a couple of years ago, and we're making our first grants this year. And one of the entities put in for a grant, and in the process of that said, as we gather other grant funds, we're going to decrease our share of our match to the program. And when I went on a site visit to discuss that with them, I said, well, why are you going to do that? And they said, well, we've never been able to get the voters to approve a general purpose penny, so we don't have a whole lot of extra resources. And, my flippant response was, why is that my problem? Your voters have made that decision, and shouldn't be my responsibility to have to backfill for that particular area. So I certainly get it from that perspective. That said, as you pointed out, there are very clear programs out there that suggest if you've not imposed a certain mill levy, then you won't qualify for those grant programs. And we saw that through the ARPA funding process. And I came to the State Loan and Investment Board and said, hey, we're getting all this pressure to reduce mills out there, and you're telling us we have to maximize it. So my folks are in this weird, awkward place. So I do think it's something that has to be considered, but we have to treat it really delicately and come to the right place around that. And I hope I've answered the question as best I can, but it is something that the way that we've structured this allows for the decision-making to come back locally. That is something that we do deeply appreciate. That said, I have before, I think both committees said that I still see some value in having the Business Ready Community Program. I talked earlier about you might be piecemealing a couple of things together with the limited amount you might get from consensus, and Business Ready Community might be the moonshot quickly to get you there in 2 years rather than in 10 years. So I still see value for both programs. Right sizing them should be part of the conversation, and I would happily engage in that.
So, Mr. Riemann, if we have a finite amount of money from the state, that we're at an inflection point. We could take that money and put it all into the consensus block grant program, or we can split it up between the BRC and the consensus. So, what would be your preference? Do we put it all into the consolidate or the consensus block grant program and try to maximize that value, or do we split that same amount of money between the two?
Yep, Mr. Chairman, if I felt we were at that inflection point, my answer might be that I would lean towards the consensus program. Because as I told all of you, I really see that as the family-ready community program, making sure that our communities are livable for the people that are here, and that we have the infrastructure to flush our toilets and to have water come on when we turn the faucet on, or fire truck's going to come. That's really critical. I see business-ready communities as that next level icing on the cake, I think is how we kind of equated it in our previous testimony. Again, if we were at that inflection point, I might go that way. I'm just not convinced we're at that inflection point. I think we can do both.
Okay. And from my perspective, I'd like to maximize the amount of money going to the communities, and the block grant program has less strings attached. So Representative Campbell.
Yeah, I understand. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand you're wanting to eliminate risk on your funding, but a lot of these models have failed. The public's not happy with the results that we've gotten with this. You keep talking about strategy and planning. As this gets closer to the folks, can you kind of tell me where you're looking at as far as strategy and planning to make this more effective? Because the whole purpose of this is to get our infrastructure in place before we need it. You know, I look over in Kimmer and I see that we're building a power plant, and at the same time, they're still trying to get their infrastructure in place. In order for our communities to succeed, the community that's taking on that project has got to be able to take in a tax base. They have to be able to make sales tax. It's got to be beneficial to the communities. A lot of these programs have not been, or have been behind. Its timing is my biggest concern with that, to where I would like to look at things that we can do on a more local level to expedite, to get appropriate funds where it needs to be in a timely fashion. I think that's one of the biggest problems with this program. Thank you.
Mr. Reeman.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, if it's okay, I'll take this one, just representing all the local practitioners in the state with Wyoming Economic Development Association, and with Wyoming Association of Municipalities, and between Wyoming County Commissioners Association. All of our members are the ones that are in the grants doing the planning at the ground level. And where we're seeing a deficit and where we really are appreciating the consensus block grant funding is aligning those strategies together. And one of the things that we believe that is something that needs to be integrated in at some way, someplace, is a comprehensive economic development strategy, so we can address what exactly you're talking about. And I've been saying singing from the same hymnal in the same pew on the same line, where I think there's a lot of disconnect, even locally to the state level. How do we maximize where we're low on resources and people? Representative Haraldson and I've talked about his community, like who's going to do the work in our least, which you guys got a lot of cool things going on, but it's the human capital of, I know Representative Haraldson serves on a lot of different boards, you know, and so how do we get them together? And this kind of forces that conversation and puts a little more strategy into it. The structure piece, I think, and funding piece, of course, is where you guys come into play, and funding locally where we tax ourselves. And those are policy decisions that we hope to keep continuing flushing out. And unfortunately, I don't think we have that. Here it is for you right now. That's why myself and from previous testimony with Brad Enzi from Laramie Chamber of Business Alliance on the behalf of WIDA is just starting with 4 basic pillars of strategy, structure, funding, and accountability. And where we feel like there's one big player missing right now, and that's the executive branch, not the current one, because their term is fading. It's going to be that new one. And the new legislature that's coming in. I think we're doing a lot of great groundwork right now, but we need to think about what we're immediately solving for right now. And right now it is a supplemental budget for the Business Council, because they will time out. And I think the people in our members have made it clear there is absolutely a space for them. And so that's, I think, some of the conversation we can have right now. The structure, the consensus block grant funding, this is going to be a great roadmap to present to the next legislature and the next executive branch, and then how that fits into the rest of the state strategy and, you know, helping with the locals align. Does that make sense?
Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the conversation. You're absolutely right. So as I look at our list here and I look at these different counties, so one of the struggles that I have, even when we're talking about this, the cost of doing infrastructure it's stupid. Like, I mean, let's face it, you guys, it's gotten absolutely ludicrous. Where we started on a 16th Street project there in Wheatland that was like, oh, if we could just come up with 7-8 million, we'll be good. Oh, well, maybe if we could just come up with 12 million, we'd be good. Oh, maybe if it was 14 million, we finally made it. Never mind, that's not enough. We got to shorten the entire project by 6 blocks, 7 blocks. So now we're trying to tie old into new, and it's a disaster. And we're sitting there going, why is it this hard? And I look at it and go, okay, at 100 million in Platte County, we've got $2.4 million. You're like, man, that's a pretty good chunk of change. So you break it into 5 communities and a county and some special districts. And I got a water system in Hartfield falling apart. And I mean, it just, the list goes on and on. I could point out a million things. And I turned around and spent a pile of capital and spent a pile of hours just trying to get a water tower so we didn't wash out half of our town. And I want that to sink in as we have this conversation, because we could sit here and say, we want business-ready communities. Well, I guarantee you if we had a business move in and that water tower failed 2 months later, we're not a ready community. If it's a situation where we can't flush our toilets and know that what we sent down is going to stay down, we got a problem. And so I look at it and go, 100 million, that's a large sum of money. Until you look at 5 communities trying to divvy up 2.4 million, when in all reality, it's going to cost us way more than that to even think about a simple water project or a simple infrastructure update. We're talking, it's 3 years to get a transformers. I got a power issue right now. I got a 2.5 megawatt transformer, and I need to have a 7.5 megawatt transformer, and we're 3 years out. And we don't have the money. And we'll come up with it. We'll figure it out. We're the community that we are maxed out. We 6-penny ourselves. We do all of it. Why? Because we don't have any other options. And so as I look at this and I look at business ready community, we need to have a conversation now of what is that doing that needs to stay? What needs to stay? Because first of all, let's take care of the foundation before we build something beautiful on top of that foundation that won't last long-term because we can't keep the infrastructure underneath it around. I want to make Platte County and Wheatland an area where community or businesses want to come. But whenever a business is told, I'm sorry, you're gonna have to come up with $250,000 worth of money right out of the gate to bring water and sewer over to where you're at, that's not gonna fly. It just can't.
Mr. Chairman.
Don't you think?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, Representative Haroldson, I wholeheartedly agree. And back to the strategy, and something I've harped on with this group for a long time is our tax structure. And we know that we are very minerals dependent. When the Business Council was started, it was to diversify away from minerals because we knew we wanted to spread that base out. The whole purpose of economic development is high tide lifts all boats. And so we have been trying to move that needle. But I think one of the things that, as I look at the Great Seal of Wyoming, that we need to be mindful of is who still does pay our bills. And it's oil and gas and coal and all of our legacy industries. And so when I think of exactly what you're just saying, the poster child of this comes to mind is Kimmer, right? We're looking at nuclear development there. We're developing old coal space. It's pretty exciting stuff, but we kind of put the cart before the horse because we have a $60 million deficit in sewer, to take this on. And so, how are we strategizing as a state to help lift them up? Because if that gets going, that means uranium's mined. And even if it's only mined in, say, Fremont County, there's an old mine there, it doesn't matter. Every single one of my communities, every single county gets a severance tax receipt and FMRs every month. So it lifts the base. So we need to when we think about the strategy, we need to talk about our top 3 industries still. I think there needs to be counter collaboration with agencies, with the Wyoming Energy Authority. I mean, I think we're doing it. It just, there needs to be more strategy around that.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think, Mr. Raymond, this is kind of for you. Right now, we've talked about they've got to come up with, I think it's a 25% match. There's a lot of our smaller communities that really have a hard time qualifying for these grants. I'm just wondering, looking at Kimmer, and this is just a question, I think this is germane with what we're talking about. If a community, a small community like Kimmer doesn't have the ability, they have to struggle to qualify for some of these grants, would not a low interest loan be a better option? Because with a loan, they would be able to release that money automatically to get to the communities that need it, as opposed to having to come up with the money for the match on that grant. Would that make sense?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, I think you have to have all the tools in the toolbox. I'm one that argued against the 25% match. You don't require it in state statute. I can appreciate why the Business Council did it, but it does disadvantage, from my perspective, many of our communities by imposing that. So I'm not a fan of that particular approach.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just thinking as far as timeliness, because a lot of these projects, the communities know, so then when they get a large project that's coming into their neck of the woods or something, in order to be business friendly, they really need to get that in there. And I think that is a huge detriment to a lot of our smaller communities. I think that we ought to look at low interest loans as a better vehicle on that. Thank you.
All right. Ms. Blackwell.
I can speak to that a little bit. I tried to work with Kimmer related to what was happening there when I was still with the Office of State Lands and Investments. They went as far as trying to work with the county to get a capital construction loan from the office to help address some of these issues that they were having. At that time, the capital construction loan program had an interest rate of 1% for 5 years, 2.5% for 25 years. About that time is when that program was changed. That interest rate is now tied to the yield of the U.S. Treasury of the same duration of the term of the loan. So 1%, a 5-year loan is probably about 4 to 5% now. Changing that program completely killed that program. That program was a wonderful program and people used that. They would get a clean water loan, a drinking water loan. They'd use their countywide consensus, maybe have some mineral royalty grant funding in there, and then get a capital construction loan to finish the whole project. That would allow a community to do sidewalk to sidewalk, the whole dang thing. You'd get new sidewalks, new curbs and gutters. You'd have a whole new street. Your water and sewer in that road would all be replaced. And you wouldn't do it piecemeal. You would be able to do a large project. And that's what makes these projects very expensive is most of our communities can only afford to do, say, a mile at a time. The mobilization costs related to our communities for the rural nature of our state is exorbitant. And so it makes it difficult for our very small communities to attract more than one bidder. Therefore, their cost of their projects are very high. The other thing we run into is, as you have all discussed, lack of workers. A couple other things that have been talked about that I just want to put in your mind is if you think of countywide consensus as an ounce of prevention, the saying an ounce of prevention is better than a pound of cure, you can kind of look at Representative Harrelson's situation with the water tower. And after I testified at JAC yesterday, I thought of this had we had countywide consensus for the 10 years, maybe Wheatland's water tower wouldn't have gotten to that point because they would have had this resource that they could have gone to their county and gotten countywide consensus and hadn't have gone through all of the competitive grants and come to Cheyenne and have that argument Rather, they're having it at a local level and they're having that conversation. And so countywide consensus, while it doesn't allow you to say, do planning studies, it makes you plan in the sense of, I can get X amount this year, I can get X amount next year. And so it makes them kind of plan for those big projects. Whereas I believe with BRC, you can actually do a planning study. You can go in and say, we want to study our community and do a capital improvement plan for our whole community. Look at our roads and our streets, because the state's already putting the money in to do a capital improvement plan for my water and sewer. I'm going to go a step further. And I just think the state is making great steps, but now is not the time to take away any funding to help our communities fund these projects. Like Harrelson said, the cost is exorbitant. After 2020, the cost to do a water project has tripled, if not quadrupled, for our communities. To do a street overlay, it is double the cost to do half the amount of length that you used to do. Our state doesn't have the population to generate the tax revenue that our communities and our counties need to do these very, very expensive projects.
So, Ms. Blackwell, if we loosen or moved the boundaries a little bit on the consensus block grant, so it allowed planning to be one of the reimbursable or project costs, would that make it so the BRC is no longer needed? Because that's what I'm hearing. The BRC that has that planning phase, that planning component, but we like the consensus better. So do we meld them together so that we don't need two programs working at the same time?
I would say, in my personal opinion, if you meld them together, you have to double the amount you put in whatever program. Otherwise, it's not going to be sufficient to help our communities. We're going to continue taking little bites at the apple, and our small communities are just going to continue to struggle. Niobrara County gets $557,000 per this equation. That doesn't get a mile of road done for them. That does very little for them in the big picture. And they're the ones who probably need the most money because they have the least population to help generate the revenue to take care of their infrastructure, because it's just as expensive for them to do their projects, and maybe even more expensive than, say, it is for a Cheyenne or a Casper.
And BRC will build that road?
I am not a professional in BRC, but I believe roads are something that they can work on. I would have to phone a friend from the business council.
Okay. Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With that in mind, and this is an opinion, I do want your guys' opinions on this, but with this funding, one of the biggest problems that I'm seeing is we're having a hard time identifying our successes. I mean, there's some that are glaring, but there are others that are complete failures. What would your thoughts be with putting some sort of matrix? Because we're trying to bring business into these communities, correct? That's the whole purpose of all this. So if we give this money to a community, I think we ought to be able to evaluate it in 1 year, 3 year, 5 year increments. For example, in Kimmer, lodging is a huge problem in Kimmer, Wyoming, along with the infrastructure. Amenities are a lot of reasons why our kids are leaving. So when we're putting all this money into a community to upgrade their infrastructure, we should be able to look like, for example, lodging is a problem. The business council could go in there and talk with them, use their experience, reach out to a motel for free, a chain, and if they can bring that in. So, and for example, in the first year, they could say, we reached out to this business, this business, this business, because of the infrastructure that we're putting in. Year 3, we could look at it and say, okay, we've got 2 motels in here that generated a restaurant and a lounge and another brick and mortar store, to where there's actually metrics that we can look out to see that this money is actually doing what it is supposed to do. You know, if we could, in a perfect world, folks, I think we could go ahead and, get our infrastructure in place to where when the project a lot of these large projects, whatever it may be, when those workers come into town, if that town is in position to receive sales tax, it's going to become self-sufficient. And not only that, but then those workers are going to be able to stay in Kimmer instead of Evanston or Salt Lake. Does that make sense? I want to know if you guys would agree that there should be some sort of metrics that we can identify the success of the programs.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, I think the short answer is yes, we agree. That's why you have multiple components within, in particular, the minerals bill that require us to develop a consensus plan at the local level and to modify that over time, which includes a variety of different objectives that have to be included in there. And there are also multiple reporting requirements from the cities, towns, and counties up to the Office of State Lands and Investments. And then ultimately from that department to both the Minerals and the Appropriations Committee as the bill stands right now.
All right. Representative Riggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is for anybody. And I love the consensus project list. It keeps the communities on task and identifies the priorities and keeps reminding them that it's there. And the other thing I was wondering about was the on the planning. Are we talking because they have the expertise in the planning area, or otherwise you have to just, contract with someone else, or because they're here all the time, you can reach out to them at any given time to keep the project planning going forward?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Riggins, this is what I said to you guys yesterday on a couple of things. This is why it's important for a strategy where we're measuring twice and cutting once. And being very resourceful with the resources that we have in front of us and creating that patchwork quilt of funding. So you've got to have a plan in place for this kind of development. If Wheatland, no offense, had a plan in place, you would have been planning to replace that water tower. And I think you had made that comment earlier about just not adding, replacing old. Like, the deferred maintenance list on my infrastructure for just water and sewer is unreal. So a measurable plan is going to be a huge component.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just
Yes,
respond to the
agreement.
first end of that and maybe to the broader conversation, this whole BRC versus countywide consensus conversation. If you go to the memo that we provided to the Appropriations Committee in, what was that, May, June, somewhere in there, we had the last part of that memo was about program integration. And I'm not here to defend and say it has to be the BRC in its current, iteration. Behind the scenes, we were trying to figure out, is there another mechanism? Is there another way to do this? The key piece that I want to leave with you is that, and Representative Haraldson, you hit this on the head. Even at 100 million, it can get spread pretty thin pretty quickly. What I want to articulate is that there ought to be some mechanism by which an entity doesn't have to wait 10 years in order to make that change for a community, that water tower. But they can go someplace and get access to that resource that cuts that down to 2 years and allows them to get that business to come in and invest in their community, or the existing businesses to expand, or an entrepreneur in the community to be there. So it really is about what is the backstop. That's the part I'm trying to articulate. What can we do there? And maybe that's somehow integrated into the countywide consensus program. It's just a matter of then who's the decision maker of that. Is it a coalition of our bodies? Is it the business council? Is it the state loan investment board? I don't know that answer quite yet. But that's really the part that I'm trying to articulate about that you have to have something on the back end for those cases where you need the moonshot.
Okay. Representative Haraldson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the conversation. This is good. And at this point, I'm asking a question as much as making a statement. MRG does help with that. And we got to keep that in mind. And so as you're talking about infrastructure, that was a 20-year-old water tower. That water tower was supposed to last 60 years. We were told it was going to last 60 years. The company went defunct, so the warranty disappeared. So there are those moments like that where MRG is that moonshot, that backfill that says, whoa, we never saw that one coming. You're absolutely right. We should be planning ahead. We should be sitting there going 10 years, 15 years down the road, we will have to do fill in the blank. And I'm not saying that our community did everything perfect. I think we could always have 2020 and look back and go, man, you should have made the phone call sooner before they were defunct to get them in there to try do something, whatever. Why did we take the lowest bid, right? We could always ask those questions. But I think MRG funding is also a piece of this pie we should bring in and have a conversation on, because MRG is that the wheels are coming off this bus and we're going to save it from a disaster. MRG is there to save that day. Now, MRG shouldn't be the one we seek for the routine maintenance that needs to be done. That's where this could cover that basis. But I think that there are multiple tools that we have to consider beyond just business ready community grants. And so, but there also is a point where if we're not careful, we get too much funding streams flowing and we can't sustain it. And we also don't want it to be a deal where we pull into those downturn years and go, oh my goodness, we can't sustain this type. And then the communities feel that major downturn as well. So I think that, talk to me about MRG and its marriage in with this as well.
Mr. Chairman, my one response is that MRG is for that holy, we had something that is absolute emergency. I need to go get that funding immediately. MRG is not that. We've been planning for this and we want to take the next big leap sort of approach. And that's where BRC or some iteration of it can come in place for a community is the way I envision it.
Okay. Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Harpstreet, you mentioned something that has been in the back of my mind from the beginning. You said you had a list there of projects, pending projects or needed projects. Is that list such that you could give us an idea? Let's say we just decided, okay, we're gonna splurge, we're gonna do whatever it takes, and we're gonna fix everything that needs fixed all this year. What would that cost us? And then I would like us to look at that and put that in perspective is how much, and there is value in savings, but how much money has this state squirreled away in savings in the last 5 to 10 years? Maybe what we need to do is be taking care of our responsibilities first, and then when there's money left over, we have a little bit to save. But I just want that perspective. What would it take for us to just drop the cash right now and fix everything, get us back to par?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Pendergraft, when I presented this to you in, where were we in? June. Rollins, June. Okay, in June, there was a couple zeros because my team we were still trying to get our information in that they had messed up. So the estimated value of water sewer infrastructure as of this time from 58 of our communities is $12.1 billion. The estimated cost of deferred maintenance is $1.8 billion. And their available designated reserve funds that they have that they're trying to grow is at 154.6 million. So that's the local match that we have available. So if you gave us $2 billion right now, just for approximately 2/3 of my membership, we could get a lot of problems. Yeah, but that's only 58.
Okay.
Although Lost Springs really doesn't have much of a infrastructure to.
Okay, let's move along here. We don't want to get bogged down and rehash same things we've been talking about in each committee for most of the summer. What we want to talk about is some things that we as a joint committee need to delve into. So any more conversation for this group? If not, we will move on to public comment. Chairman Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before they leave the testimony chairs, I'd like to hear their thoughts on the differences between the two committees when it comes to the holdover of funds that are not used in a particular year.
Mr. Riemann?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Co-Chairman Bear, it would be my desire to ensure that we could hold those funds over the appropriate amount of time, which, I can't tell you what that might look like. Again, these could be small dollars for some communities to try and do a big project, but, I do like the approach that you were taking in the Appropriations Committee towards that issue. I still think we have to deal with the 4-year encumbrance and what does encumbrance mean? If it's the idea that we have dedicated it to a particular project within our plan, then I think we're perfectly fine. If it means that we have to have a contract, I think that's a little bit more difficult of a timeline.
Follow up?
Yeah, just for clarification, that holdover for the county has no strings attached. So it's when that community comes to conclusion that this is our application, then it's available to them and it has gained interest and dividend for the state over that period of time. So the block amount just continues to grow 1 year after another. And to your point about the 4-year issue, I think that applies to those dollars that are already provided to the community. So if they're not taking the money in a particular year, the four-year timeframe does not start. That would be my interpretation of that. So I think we deal with that in the JAC approach. And my expectation is that this is allowing communities like Ms. Blackwell mentioned, Niobrara County, they've got $500,000 per year. They've got a $2 million, $5 million project. They can build that up until they get to that point. And to your point earlier, you said, and I liked your terminology, the consensus community grants is the family ready grants. But then you went on to say that and you talked at length about the BRC being the icing on the cake. I think with putting all the funding into the community consensus grants allows communities to differentiate. Some communities may be ready for the icing. And if all the funds are there and they're maximized by not having to have a central administration program over in the BRC program, you've maximized those dollars. That community that's ready for the icing, that's ready to use it, as Representative Sherwood mentioned, for growth of the community, for business purposes, business ready purposes, as the business ready community grants are purposed, then they can use it for that. There's nothing in this bill that says they can't. So I think it just gives maximum flexibility to those local governments, and it gives them, as you've lauded, consistent funding that they can count on for those purposes. So I think this is an answer to all the above points that both you and Ms. Harpsworth have pointed out. So,
yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'll go back and look at that appropriations approach that you just articulated with a sharper lens. If that's the way that it sets up, then I don't know that I have an issue with that. In terms of where a community might be well positioned, you're absolutely right. There may be those that are already feeling as if the infrastructure is at a par where they are able to do that next level of work. And quite frankly, over time, it would be my hope and wish that with a program like Consensus, that all counties and all municipalities are going to get to that same point where infrastructure is on par and we are taking that next leap. We're not having to try and keep up.
All right, thank you. Thank you for your testimony. Any other public comments from the room? Again, we don't want to rehash anything, but if there's something that has come up between the bills from the different bodies here, the different committees, that you feel that you need to accentuate or talk about, please come forward. Do we have anyone online? Okay. Committee, any further discussion before we move on to the next topic?
what is the next topic?
The Wyoming Business Council. We're not going to take any votes. but this is an opportunity for the two committees to hear what's going on and the thoughts from the community as well as from the two committees, and hopefully make a stronger bill going forward. So, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to hear from members of the Joint Minerals Committee how the $100 million was arrived at.
So I could lend to that. Mr. Raymond proposed, I think it was 75 million and then tapering down to 35 million after first little bit, or flat 75. Okay. It was my idea to hit this strong at the first, infuse it with as much money as possible, and then taper off and have something continual after that. But we needed to start off with a bang. And 100 million was just a round number placeholder, recognizing that we needed to look at the whole state finances to come up with the money. And we took it from the LSRA because we had no other idea where to get it from. We were going to rely on our JAC to help us with that endeavor to come up with some long-term funding. So it was more of a placeholder than anything else, Chairman Bear. Any other conversation? Follow up?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Maybe it would be helpful for us to, I know it's apples and oranges, but just to hear from our staff what the history of the BRC funding has been for maybe the last 10 years. If we could have somebody come up and just share with us, what that has looked like so that we have something to compare it to.
All right.
Because we only have a couple of years of the consensus grants that were in effect and how that was funded. And then it didn't have any more funding.
I think we have some experts in the room. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm Elizabeth Martineau with the Legislative Service Office Budget Fiscal Division for the Joint Appropriations Committee is who I primarily staff. My internet is being slow, but I did do a memo I believe every member of the committee received in April of this year, and it does outline the last couple of years of historic appropriations that the legislature has provided. So I'm pulling that up right now. There she is. So in terms of historical funding, this year, obviously, there was no additional appropriations for the Business Ready Community Programs for the 27-28 biennium. Last year, for the 25-26 biennium, it was $46.6 million of general funds. In 23-24, it was an additional $46.3 million. In 21-22, as you recall, there was quite a bit of a revenue downturn, so that was $17.6 million, which was the lowest it had been in this entire history. In the 2019-2020 biennium, it was $38.6 million, and in the 2017-28 biennium, it was also $38.6 million. During the beginning of the program, which was in about 2003-2004, that's kind of the couple of years where it spiked, so it went from about $45 million to $65 million to $75 million over kind of a 3-year period. And then once projects kind of took off, it dropped back off and it's leveled to about 40 million is about what I would say the average is for the last couple of biennium. And then earlier you had heard a figure of about $83 million is what is currently been appropriated but unexpended in the Business Ready Communities Program account. Of that, about 63 to 64 million is general fund. The rest is called S4 or the Local Governments CapCon Fund, which is what is also used for the MRG program.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Martineau. Just amazing how those numbers can come so quickly. Very, very smart people we have working here. Okay, any other conversation before we move on? All right, let's move on to the next topic, which is the Wyoming Business Council. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, just real quick, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, maybe just as I've been listening and kind of a recap, looking at both of our bills, I think planning needs to be addressed. I think we are be it through Wyoming Business Council and them having that funding, depending on where we land on that, or through this, planning has to be addressed. Second of all, I do believe that having the ability for these small communities to be able to bank, I mean, banking would be a bad term maybe, but the ability to hold those funds over, I think is going to be vitally important. So you're not sitting there going, man, we got $500,000. What do we do with it? Nothing. You don't do anything with $500,000 these days. I mean, it's sad to say $500,000 doesn't do anything when we're talking about infrastructure. So giving the ability to bank that and maybe take a wider swing would be intelligent. So I think those two things are what I hear really important moving forward for our municipalities and our counties. Is planning has to be a part of this conversation, because they can get stuck. And I will say this, some of these small communities, like I'm gonna use Hartfield as an example, they're so overwhelmed. And if they can't even get help with the planning, how do you get the project underway? So those are, I think planning is important. And then the ability to bank. The discussion on permanent funds is also very much important, with the understanding that that we've got a pocket knife and we're eating an elephant right now. So it's going to take some time to make this reality.
And Representative Harrelson, I agree with you. I think if we do meld the two programs together, planning component needs to be put into the consensus block, because that is expensive. And it's overwhelming to a small community to get started without doing some upfront studies and some planning. So I think that would be an opportunity to expand this. Also, being able to bank money for larger projects without that fear of it going away. So you're not piecemealing small projects because you can't afford to go after the big projects. And, I think you bring some good points. The other thing is long-term funding. The minerals bill is a short two-year funding, and then there's unknowns after that. I think a long-term funding mechanism would be beneficial for the towns, the communities, and the counties to know that this is an ongoing effort. They can do a 10-year plan and not have to worry about 2 years from now, all of a sudden that the rug gets pulled out from under them. So your points are well taken. Thank you very much. Anything else? We'll go back to the experts then on their next topic. Mr. Fuller.
Try this one. There we go.
Here we go.
All right, so Mr. Chairman, members of the committees, I'll take a high-level overview of the next three bill drafts. There are two from the Joint Appropriations Committee, 27 LSO 42 draft 0.9, 27 LSO 44 draft 0.8, and then from the Joint Minerals Committee is 27 LSO 61 draft 0.6. These are 2-03 through 2-05 in the online meeting materials. And rather than go through each of the drafts individually, I'll generally just go through this matrix that Mr. Richards prepared for the two bill drafts for really 61 and 42. Broadly, 27 LSO 42 is a bill draft that simply repeals specified programs and accounts of the Wyoming Business Council. 27 LSO 61 also repeals certain programs of the Business Council, but also makes a number of substantive and technical changes to the statutes of the Business Council. So the first 8 items that are listed on that spreadsheet are programs that are repealed in both drafts. So there is no difference there. They are the Brownfield Revolving Loan Fund, which, at least for the Joint Minerals Committee, as I described yesterday, is not found in statute. It was a program from the EPA that provided money that went through the Business Council and in conjunction with the Department of Environmental Quality, administered those funds. There's approximately $500 remaining of those funds. The Workforce Housing Program, the Community Facilities Program, the Large Project Loan Program, all are repealed in both drafts. Although at least I would note for joint minerals, there was discussion yesterday of amending that program rather than repealing it, but the Joint Minerals Committee took no action at that time. So the status in the minerals draft is still to repeal that, that large project account. The next two are programs that are part of the Partnership Challenge Loan Program, the natural gas fueling infrastructure, and the Main Street Loan Participation. And then the other two programs are the Small Business Investment Credit and the Science, Technology, and Energy Financial Aid. Then from there, Mr. Chairman, the bill drafts diverge in how they deal with the programs. So first, for the state broadband program, the joint appropriations draft would repeal that program entirely, repeal basically that entire article of statute, but insert language that would allow the Business Council to receive and pass through federal funds for that may be made available, that have been made available or may be made available for broadband projects. For the minerals draft, the draft amends threshold download and upload speeds for residential and commercial projects. It removes the requirement that the Business Council designate an employee as the state broadband coordinator, and it removes the requirement for the formation and activity of the Broadband Advisory Council. Otherwise, the state broadband program would remain in statute per the minerals draft. The next is the energy conservation or performance conservation program. That is a program that allows for performance contracting of energy projects and efficiency upgrades. The minerals draft would move that program from the Business Council to the Wyoming Energy Authority. Otherwise, there are no changes to that program in the minerals draft. The joint appropriations draft would repeal that program entirely. The same for the next two, which were part of the Endow initiatives, the Startup Wyoming and Kickstart Wyoming program. The minerals draft keeps both of those programs. I would note for Kickstart Wyoming, that draft amends the maximum funding amount for a particular project from $50,000 to $150,000. Both of those programs in the joint appropriations draft in 42 are repealed. Next, the Market Expansion Grant and State Trade Expansion Program. Both of these programs, and didn't really discuss these yesterday in joint minerals. These are two programs that are not found in statute that the Business Council has created and operated. There was no action taken in the minerals draft for these two programs. The joint appropriations program would expressly repeal those programs. Next, for business-ready communities, the only changes in the minerals draft after amendment yesterday would be to remove the financial limits that were imposed on planning grants. The minerals draft would just allow planning grants without financial limit. There was a modification of two definitions that were more conforming amendments. The joint appropriations bill would repeal outright the Business Ready Communities program as has been discussed earlier today. Alternatively, and this is where 27 LSO 44 comes into play, 27 LSO 44 would reduce the eligible uses for Business Ready Community funds, and then also would impose a 4-year reversion of those. Once the funds are granted, they would revert after 4 years. In terms of, there's also a note there about legislative liaisons, and so I'll kind of address that separately. 27 LSO 44 includes language that would provide for legislative liaisons to the Business Council, and that draft is very clear in specifying that those liaisons would be able to participate in the activities of the Business Council. They could attend not only regular order meetings of the council, but also could sit in and observe executive sessions of the Business Council. The draft 44 makes clear that those legislative liaisons would serve 2-year terms that would be, and they would be eligible for reappointment after those terms and would be entitled to per diem salary and mileage when performing their duties as legislative liaisons to the Business Council. Mr. Chairman, this was the language that was in the staff comment in the Joint Minerals Bill, is based on the language in 44. The Joint Minerals Bill only includes one sentence that specifies that there would be a House and Senate member who would serve as legislative liaisons to the Business Council without any further description or definition in that bill draft. Then, Mr. Chairman, there was language in terms of agriculture and promotion that are part of the duties of the Business Council to add agriculture, innovation, and technology as aims of that promotion by the Business Council of Wyoming's agricultural industry. The Joint Appropriations Bill draft made no changes to that provision of statute. Then for the Partnership Challenge Loan Program, the Joint Appropriations Committee made no changes to that program. For minerals, that bill draft would actually repeal a number of those loan opportunities. And the only ones that would remain in that article of statute as a result of joint minerals actions are four specific loans: the economic disaster loans, the 50/50 loans, contract financing, and succession loans. Otherwise, all of the other loans in Article 3 of Chapter 12, Title 9 of the Wyoming statutes, those would be repealed. Then for the Small Business Innovation and Research Matching Grant, this is in 912-105D, I believe. There were no changes to the Joint Appropriations Bill for that program. For joint minerals, the language is modified that would allow matching funds for any federal innovation grant that is made available. The joint minerals draft also removes some certain dollar amounts for that program. Right now, they are, depending on the type of grant, limited to either a percentage or a maximum of $100,000 or $250,000, depending on the type of match. With the joint minerals draft, that maximum amount of state participation would be up to 100% of the federal grant amount. Then for Endow, the economically needed diverse options for Wyoming, there were no changes in the Joint Appropriations Bill draft. For joint minerals, there are a number of changes really to strike that language, primarily to strike any reference to a 20-year comprehensive economic strategy, and then to strike references to the coordinator of economic diversification, which was the position in the governor's office. There's also a number of technical changes in terms of accounts in 912-1404. There are 5 sub-accounts that are listed. One is, for example, the broadband sub-account. Just as a matter of structural changes, those sub-accounts each become its own separate account without any other substantive changes to those provisions. And then finally, the guarantee loan and loan participation. These are part of the Partnership Challenge Loan Program. The Joint Minerals Committee outright repeals that statutory language. There were no changes in the Joint Appropriations Bill draft. Functionally, though, due to action by a previous Joint Minerals Committee, those programs were no longer allowed or available after July 1, 2022, I believe. So functionally, the effect is the same between both bill drafts. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Fuller? Mr. Richards, any additional?
No, Mr. Chairman, I was just here to respond to questions. Thank you.
Okay. Members of the committee? Representative Sherwood, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess put it simply, I prefer the Minerals Committee version. I think it covers more. It's a little more thoughtful, and maybe you guys had some more time to dig into that. So thank you.
Thank you. Representative. Yes, Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To my good member of Appropriations, I'm sure this is one that you'd prefer. But let's ask, I do want to know, can you guys talk a little bit about the Endow program and your decisions on the Endow program and kind of what that looks like, because it's a repeal of the framework and removal of definition. Can we just talk, let's start with number 19, the endow.
So maybe we could defer that until we have Mr. Durrell up here to talk about that, because a lot of the framework for the Minerals Committee was based on the input from the Wyoming Business Council. Okay. Okay. Representative Sherwood, would you like to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a member of the public who participated in Endow, I was just reminding the chairman that we do have, is he still here? The former chairman of Endow is in the room. And just wanted to point out that we do have some institutional knowledge
Good.
Sitting over here.
And I'm
with
sorry
us.
to put you on the spot. I just wanted public to hear that.
Yes,
comment.
thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, with no further comments or consideration for these two very smart individuals, we will.
This
Are you
is
okay?
how I attend my meetings now.
Was there anyone online? Any questions online? Okay, let's move on then. We'll invite Mr. Josh Durrell to come forward. And again, we don't want to rehash everything that we've had, but over the past number of weeks. But if there's anything between the two different bills that you think you need to accentuate or point out, Mr. Durrell, I think that would be beneficial.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Josh Durrell. I'm the CEO of the Wyoming Business Council. With me today, I have Derek Smith, who's the co-chair of our board. He shares that role with the governor. I don't know if we need to rehash a whole lot. We prefer the minerals bill also. It took all of the information that we provided both committees over the summer and ground it into the statute to really give us the flexibility to handle the individual problems at a local level. We know that we have a number of different problems that don't all look the same. And so it got rid of some very specific and maybe sort of hamstrung statutory language from back in the 06 to 09 area. We've got a lot of cleanup in that. And so we prefer the minerals bill. We think that it accurately reflects what we have presented to both committees. And I'm happy to answer any questions that might come up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Durrell. So you prefer, do you support the minerals bill, or would you rather not have either one?
Mr. Chairman, we think that the minerals bill, as we testified yesterday and answered questions yesterday, accurately reflects what we need to move forward.
Okay, good. Thank you. Representative Harrelson.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Josh, can you just, so we see a modification of the endow statute under Startup Wyoming and then the repealing of that framework. Can you kind of just talk about what the minerals did with the endow program? Obviously, we don't have a change on the endow with a repeal of startup, but could you kind of talk about what the minerals side looks like? And just, I haven't done enough research to be able to answer that question myself. If you could help us with that.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, you could think of it like housekeeping. Many of the references there were positions in the governor's office that existed in the previous administration and no longer exist in the administration, and therefore may come back, who knows? But again, I think that it points to very specific language in a statute that really probably needs to have more flexibility in it, that enables us to deal with the problem of today. And the problem in the very, the nature of our communities is that they all have different problems. And so that very specific language is really just housekeeping so that we have the broad, kind of more, what I would call flexible solutions, and also the control of those solutions to apply them in the appropriate places.
Any other questions for Mr. Durrell or Mr. Smith? Clarifications? Yes, Representative Harrelson, I knew you'd have a felt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Not a follow-up, just another question now. This morning, as you've been hearing the conversation on the BRC and the planning side of it, can you just talk to us a little bit about kind of, and you and I have been having a little bit of side conversation. What does that planning look like in BRC? How much of it is in the planning realm? What have we seen that? Because obviously there's an itch that's needing to be scratched, and how much of it is being scratched by this or by other grants? Because I know that we've gotten grants outside of BRC for planning in our area that, because there are other grants. Can we just talk a little bit about maybe what the landscape looks like for the planning side and what are potential options?
Mr. Durrell.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, the planning grants are statutorily limited to 2% of the BRC account in the total. This year, we asked our board of directors to approve a block grant of about $1.6 million in order to be able to move much quicker and also to allow communities to access those funds without having to go through the board and SLIB in order to do those. Those agreements are also, those planning grants are also capped at $100,000 for our BRC grants. And communities utilize them all the time. Sometimes they use them to do their own master plan. Sometimes they use it to plan for specific things. But those are part of BRC. They're part of our BRC report that we deliver to the legislature each year. And they are also all on our website and covered in our public board meetings.
All right. Any further comments, questions? Representative Riggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Durrell, so you're just providing the financing for them to pay for planning, or are you actually guys doing some of that on their behalf when they make application?
Mr. Durrell.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Riggins, today, generally speaking, we are providing the financing. However, that would be a little bit of a short shrift to our team, who is out in the communities every day, working with communities to do planning that doesn't necessarily cost money or involve a consultant. We do a lot of that. In fact, earlier today, we heard about all the great things that were happening in Platte County. We've been working in Platte County for a very long time on the Assessment to Action program that I believe Representative Harrelson mentioned. He's familiar with it. That's been going on for quite some time, far before we talked about it in any of these committee meetings, and it will continue far after. That is not costing the community any money at all. That is our team working with them and helping facilitate that. And the beautiful thing is that's a collection of people who are doing the work on their own, and they're learning how to do that work and work together. And as was mentioned yesterday by the good representative from Platte County, that work is bringing people from all over walks of life, not just people that are economic development professionals, but people from the community.
And I've seen that in my part of the state as well. You have some very, very good people that have worked with the communities in the planning and consulting stages. I appreciate the knowledge that's in that group. Follow-up, Representative Riggins.
Yeah, because I've spoken a few, like Drew and a few others, and I thought there's no charge for those. So I want to make sure that everybody understood that. And when we were talking about the planning stuff, I say, well, your first resource is run to your regional director, whatever, and say, hey, this is where we're at. Can you help us with that? So I just wanted to clarify that it wasn't always the money directly. So thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you very much. Oh, we have one.
Thank you.
I didn't see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
So going back to similarities in the bill, so I'm in this lovely teal blue color on our sheet. If the Business Council could speak to some concerns I've heard from constituents about maybe tools going away or tools being folded into other programs, and just offer clarity and peace of mind about flexibility that we're working towards, that would be great. If you can speak to the recommendation on the Workforce Housing Infrastructure Loan Program, which I understand hasn't been funded. So on paper, in the books, it looks great. It looks like a tool we should be using, but we're looking at repealing it. Can you tell me where that the need to address that tool could be handled elsewhere in your programs?
Mr. Durrell?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Sherwood. So first, in addition to where that is handled today and where it comes from, that piece of legislation came forth in 2006. It had a sunset date of 2009 and hasn't been funded since. So there's zero money in there. And we are utilizing the Building Resilient Communities program to do that today. So BRC funding is utilized for that. We have had 3 workforce housing infrastructure projects come before our board this year. 2 of those have made it all the way through SLIB. All 3 were approved by our board of directors. Again, only 2 of those 3 made it through SLIB. However, that program is positioned and can be used for that exact purpose. The nice thing about having that one program to do that is that it's flexible. It can, again, pay for growth in a community.
Follow up?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Durrell, for that. So I'm understanding that's rolling under BRC. Can you speak to the Community Facilities Program, which I know has been a beloved program? We've had a few pet projects come through that. Both versions of the bill look to repeal that. Do you feel that that program could then be addressed through another business council program or the county consensus block grant program? Thank you.
Mr. Durrell?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Sherwood, I believe it would be better suited in the community block grants, the countywide consensus block grant that is being contemplated. It makes more sense. I think it fits the idea that those are existing structures that can be upgraded or maintained or handle the maintenance around that, and that would leave BRC more available and the efforts of the business council to focus on those growth initiatives rather than the work that we know that the local communities understand their assets better than we do. We know that they understand the maintenance better than we do. I think we've heard testimony to that. So let's let them go. Like we shouldn't be holding those. Let's let that happen at a local level. Whereas maybe the growth elements, the ideas that we need to look and analyze growth and how that's going to impact things and what's needed for that seems to fit squarely in our camp. We've got a number of people on our team that are good at that. So let's sort of allow those community facilities funds to be handled by the consensus idea and the growth be handled by BRC.
All right,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have one more clarification here. So I see that we are rolling some of the loan programs together, that we're moving forward with the 50/50, the economic disaster loan, the contract financing, and the succession loan. 1, can you make sure that I understand that correctly? 2, follow-up is, any of those loan programs are done with a local bank. Are there any limits on what that loan can be used for? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Sherwood, first of all, those are all currently in, except for the Main Street, those are all in that loan program. The Main Street loan program, not the Main Street program itself, but the Main Street loan program is a program that can be serviced by the challenge loan and the partnership loan program. What that also means is that I won't make a blanket statement and say they can be used for anything because those are in partnership with banks. Those are also for, there are things that we look at to make sure that we can do those loans. But we work together with a bank in order to fund things that they may not be able to due to their own regulations or restrictions that would enable businesses to utilize those facilities. So for example, on a Main Street, you might have an older building that could be a really good place for a new business, but in order to house that business, other codes may have changed, like fire codes or something like that. To get it up to snuff, that would be an area where the challenge or partnership loan program could be contemplated. I don't want to make any promises. There's still a process to get that, but at least contemplated as the stopgap for those.
Okay, so, yes, Mr. Smith.
Just would like to add an ounce of the board perspective to that as well. One of the things that we looked at in the directive that we gave as a board was also there are all these loan programs. How do we make these things that are more visible, more accessible to people who'd use them? Things like the Main Street loan, that was never really taken advantage of. A good part of that may have just purely been a visibility issue. So our banks and our bankers, they have a lot of things going on outside of just the programs and the services that we as the business council can offer. If we can make that a little narrower in terms of scope of programs, if we can make them aware of this is what our portfolio is and it can serve multiple things, then that's only one program we really have to make sure that the bankers are aware of, not multiple. So it seems a little counterintuitive to go decrease the number of the programs. It makes it more accessible, but that's part of what's trying to be achieved.
And just for my clarification, there's 8 programs or activities that are in the teal color that will be repealed under both bills. And that is to provide, to take those off of your plate so that you can focus on these other areas. And I just want to make sure you're in agreement with repealing those 8 items so that you can focus on some of the other strengths that you have in your group.
Mr. Chairman, the only one that is something that we're working on right now was something that in the large project loan portfolio, and you saw our changes to that and a potential amendment to fix that and utilize that at a more broad fashion to take advantage of the manufacturing renaissance that's going on in America and really make Wyoming be the place that a lot of the supply chains that don't exist in America today can be leveraged. We heard testimony from a gentleman up in the northeast corner of the state who does a lot of heavy manufacturing, and his vision is something that we want to be able to unlock with other entrepreneurs throughout the state, is keeping those Wyoming businesses here, helping them expand. And we believe that the large project loan program could be amended to better serve that purpose.
So your reservation with large project loan program, but the other 7, you're okay by narrowing your focus and repealing those?
Mr. Chairman, yes. And I do want to remind folks, some of those are just old. This is housekeeping, in a lot of cases. And there's no sense in visioning something that started in 2006 when we have another solution and are working it now. There's no sense in carrying that around in the statutes.
Okay, good. Representative Riggins? Nope. Thought I saw something off of my periphery here. Representative Campbell?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd just like to ask, what are your recommendations how to get that Main Street program more visible? Because I think that does have legs. We have a lot of empty space in our towns to where I think that could help. What are some options in making that more available to the folks?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Campbell, I think there are a number of options. I think that promoting what can go on in our communities is obviously something that we want to work on. But we also work with a lot of organizations who do that. The Main Street community, there are a number of Main Street, and that is a classification. That is the Main Street USA program is across America, and it has some sort of classifications. I actually have one of the board members sitting next to me as well at the Wyoming Main Street program, so he could dive into that. But I also think that, again, as my co-chair mentioned, it's also about making sure that these tools are not only known about and accessible, but also that the folks that are on the ground doing the work can have that nexus with us and understand the programs. I think that there's a kind of a joint responsibility there.
Any further comments or questions? Seeing none, thank you very much for being here this morning. All right, next on our list is, again, the dynamic duo of Mr. Raymond and Ms. Harpstraith.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Ashley Harpstreet, Wyoming Association of Municipalities, and also Wyoming Economic Development Association. This part of the programming for today, Jeremiah and I divided and conquered, and probably will handle most of the comments for. Per our testimony to both committees, we had done our own survey listing out all the programs that were on the chopping block, and my Wyoming Economic Development Association members especially felt like they had not been part of the 150-page or 250-page catalog in consideration of stopping some of the funding. We're just asking kindly for a pause as you, again, look at that structure, strategy, funding, and accountability, where some of these might make sense to interplay. Specifically, I agree with CEO's comments on the large loan fund. I'm a little bit more bullish on it, as I helped lobby for that in 2015 when I was an economic developer for Go Goshen. I do think it has a place and could be, it's just a tool in the toolbox. It's not costing us anything. And so I would also advocate for the broadband program. I helped get that funding taken care of. We knew when it became statute, it wasn't perfect, and we were hoping to work on it further. I had gone out of that role, and so I know that it has just kind of sat there. And then at the same time, that was when all the BEAD funding dropped. But we do think that there's a nexus to use it to help continuing to build out further. And look at it; it's been sitting there and has $2 million extra. Community facilities program, I think, has been underplayed. Just because that it has been used doesn't mean that it's not valuable. It's just that it was a policy decision not to put funds back into it. This was at a time that the Business Council was using the direction of the legislature to go more towards business-ready communities, make it more business facing. And I don't think that was the Business Council. I think that was policy decisions made by the legislature, and honestly negating some of the building blocks of economic development. And that's why in the last 6 months of presentations, we kind of try to bring you guys back to the foundations. It starts with leadership, workforce development, infrastructure development, community development, which is where that community facilities would lie. And then you have all your business recruitment and business retention on top of that. And so community facilities is a big thing. That does it directly, connect to jobs? No, but it eventually builds the baseline to help connect to the top to jobs and is part of, I think, the portfolio. So I just wouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater yet, and think that they deserve a little further consideration.
Questions, comments, concerns? All right, off my periphery, I see Representative Riggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. But you mentioned the delay. How about January? Well, take it up in January again.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Riggins, I wholeheartedly agree.
Okay. All right, looks like we're good. We'll now open it up to public comment. Anyone else in the room? We have anybody within Dow would like to come forward? I saw that stink eye you gave me.
Mr. Chairman, in all seriousness, at some point in the future, if you would like me to put together something and address you, I'm happy to. I just am not prepared to go into any depth on it, how it has been 8 years.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Riemann. Sorry to bring you back. Welcome.
Good morning. My name's Josh Keefe. I come to you today as just a private citizen. I have a unique perspective, having worked in the private and the public world for 20 years now, with a foot in both concurrently. In my past life, I worked at the Business Council as the loan portfolio manager. There were questions about different loan programs and some of the visibility and the accessibility of those things. I would say in regards to the Main Street loan program specifically, one of the struggles as a banker, which I was for 10 years, before working at the Business Council, was that a lot of those Main Street buildings are not owner occupied. So regardless if you're a small town business on Main Street and you would like to do something, you cannot. It's not that the program, I don't want to say was underutilized, which I guess it was, but the option wasn't necessarily there for tenants to be doing capital improvements to facade, improving the real estate, whatever you might want to call it. And so I think that is one of the layers of that program that 50/50 will be able to cover some of those things when it's applicable. And so I think that that is a good middle ground, if you will. Let me see, what was the other one? Oh, natural gas infrastructure. I'll just be honest, that was a fad. We did one of those loans in the history of that program over in Afton. The idea was that the commercial businesses would use it for fleet vehicles, specifically the UPS, FedEx kind of companies, for natural gas, right up the road, going to Jackson, et cetera. Long story short, we did one, and really the market dictated the need or the lack thereof for that program. So,
and I drive by that all the time. I rarely see anyone parked there filling up. So.
Correct. That loan did perform and paid off, I believe about 18 months ago. And so, really, I appreciate the committee's willingness to kind of narrow a little bit the specificity of the loan programs. I know the good co-chairman and I worked back in the day to get the succession loan program going. I would argue that in the last 4 years, that has been the most successful business council program yet. Maybe it doesn't have the most by number. However, the runway is very short. And so I think that that is something that is, I was happy to see some of the programs kind of get reinstated yesterday. Because I'll be honest, I was nervous. And I think that that is something that I have heard from a number of my current bankers and recovering bankers like myself, that that is a program that is definitely needed and is in high demand. So, and I think that having technical expertise to do some of these programs is vital as well. I think that I had heard in a past meeting that why would we be doing a loan participation if a bank can't do it on its own? There's a couple of issues that I will tell you about. One of them is Reg O, which is where certain numbers or shareholders of a bank, you cannot lend to your own shareholders over a certain amount. You also have legal lending limits where, depending on the capital of your bank, you cannot have concentration to one business owner or business. A number of the small community banks, especially in the northern part of the state, have very small legal lending limits. And the Business Council has been able to come in and help out with that to cover a part of the loan. I know there is discussion about risk. What happens if a bank or a loan goes bad? It's a pro rata loss, if there is one. So, for example, if it's not 50/50 and it's 70/30 and there's a loss of $100,000, 70% would go to the community bank, 30% would go to the Business Council. It's not an unsecured loan. So there is collateral, there is safety and soundness, all of those key financial terms people like to hear with that. So in regards to the large project, I think I sat in front of SLIB for 6 hours in October of 2016, right after that legislation got initiated. And I think one of the struggles, and I agree, I think that program should stay around. But one of the struggles is that there's too many people touching it, if you want my honest opinion. And people not with the right kind of expertise either. So I think that that is a program that should stay. It's been very difficult to use because it's competing interests, different risk tolerance levels, it's, and there's a lot of steps. And as a business, it's not worth it. It's not worth it to go through all of those. And so I think I'll stop there for now. I'll just tell you, I really loved my time at the Business Council. I think that it's a valuable organization. We made a lot of difference. And I was appreciative I could bring private industry expertise to make the state better. And so I think that that's important to maintain and to keep that going at the Business Council, especially because these projects, as you've heard, they're messy and they're complex and they're complicated. And so I think that whatever we can do to foster more people, I consider myself younger. I don't know if 42 is young or not, but there's an army of us that want to stay and we want to make this place better. And I think that these tools that are staying on the docket do that. And so I just ask that, yes, there's some things that need to be tweaked, but there's people willing to do it. And I appreciate that the committee is willing to do the same. So happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Keefe. Chairman Barrett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Keith, thank you for being here, and your comments are well suited for this meeting. And I have fond memories of our time working on that succession program. And as you saw yesterday, that is exactly why we turned around on that particular action and maintained that program. I had received testimony from individuals in my community that were taking advantage of that program. So glad to see, 5 years later, it's really doing what it was designed to do. And thank you for your comments that explain the risk factors. We had that debate on the floor back in 2021, and it was a scary moment for that program, but it was appropriate, and we got it across the finish line. So glad that it's working. And just for the committee's sake, just a little history on this thing. This is a program that we developed because we were seeing far too many family businesses that would operate for years and years. And then when the patriarchs and matriarchs decided it was time to hang it up, there wasn't a family member maybe that was ready to take over, but there was somebody out there that had the expertise in that industry that wanted to take over. And rather than losing all the effort that had been poured into building up the business, and waiting for a new entrepreneur to come along and say, well, there's still a demand, there's still a need for this service or this product. And then that person having to go through the heartache of starting a new business up and building that customer base. This allows well-developed businesses within the state of Wyoming to continue on to have a succession program that really helps both the business itself to be successful in the long run, but also helps the community to not lose that service or that product for a period of time while a new entrepreneur decides to take that up. So this is a situation where I think the government really did its job when it comes to economic development. I really like the way that we stayed within the constitutional requirements of Article 16, where it was about loans. It wasn't about grants. And I think that's a big part of the narrative that we haven't shared with the Minerals Committee, that has a lot to do with why we did some of the changes in our committee. It really had to do with our concern about the grant programs really getting a little bit close to getting outside of the constitutional mandate that was given to us by the people in 1986. So, Mr. Keefe, again, thank you for your service to the state. Thank you for your work on those programs, and thank you for your comments today.
Absolutely. Could I say one more thing? I know entrepreneurship is a big thing in this state, and I know that there's a lot of efforts, whether it's through Kickstart, YVC, whatever that might be. In kind of the vein of the succession program, I will tell you, I went to, about 2 years ago, I spent 2 days up in Missoula, Montana. And Montana has very similar issues that we do in this state in regards to keeping young people here. And they were trying to figure out, what can we do potentially to do this? And I think what I was the only out-of-stater because I wanted to go watch and see when you have not only economic developers, they had representation from all the tribes, from higher education, and a number of folks for entrepreneurship. And basically one thing that they came out with, and I was very appreciative because they actually gave tasks to everybody. It wasn't just a meet and leave kind of thing. But one thing that they really decided to focus on was they called it ETA, and it is entrepreneurship through acquisition. And I think in the vein of succession loan financing, I really would love to see the state somehow do something like that. I don't know if that lives, I would assume at the business council, but really the idea would be, I think that the chambers have that frontline experience. They know who's retiring. They know who is leaving the community or potentially has a risk to shut down. And so I think that, other states have used MBA students at their universities to kind of take over those businesses. I'm not a big fan of that myself. I think that that's jumping a little too fast and assuming a lot in the capabilities of those younger folks. But I think that is one thing that we hear about out-migration. We hear about some of those things. And it's been on my mind a lot trying to figure out some of the mechanics of if we want to keep younger people here and provide opportunities. I think that some kind of marketplace, I mean, you think of it as a classified ad if you want, but basically the chambers would kind of help list who's going to retire. And if we have the financing program, and if we have some established history with that business, I think really now what it becomes is capturing the right market. And so I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. And same with the Brownfield Fund. Cindy Martinez and I worked hard to get that Brownfield Fund. And I'll tell you a personal story. I've done over $2 billion worth of projects in this state. And from my personal development story, I had a group of investors and we took a run at the steam plant that's 8 blocks from here. And the idea though was that we needed $500,000 just to clean the site. And had a study, worked with the EPA to get it. The agreement was that the study would be done. It would be shared with the city of Cheyenne. Happy to do that if we didn't acquire the property. Long story short, we didn't. We got outbid by a California person. But I think the important part though is that yes, that federal money is going away, but there can be no development. Me with my banker hat back on, I'm not touching that property if it has a brownfield concern. And so nothing will happen. And in the specific case of that site, it was the private industry in the 1950s that they came in, they brought dirty dirt, and it had heavy metals in it. And they backfilled dirt. And now that site still to this day is sitting and crumbling. An entire city block in downtown Cheyenne because it makes it cost prohibitive to do anything. And so that is one instance where help is needed because a banker won't finance it. It doesn't make sense from a developer standpoint. And so I think that there is a need for brownfield. Unfortunately, if the feds are not going to fund that anymore, I hate to ask for money, but I think that it is something worthwhile to consider if we would like development around this state in those brownfield sites where we would like to have business or we would like to do more infill kind of projects instead of expansion. So just something to consider and think about because I really do think it would be beneficial. And I know we're always looking for ROI. I think that would be a very easy black and white ROI to provide how that fund is doing and increase in property tax, et cetera. So.
Thank you, Mr. Keefe. Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming. I've really enjoyed hearing your perspective on this. Let's go back to Montana and that conversation because you kind of piqued my interest. I think one of the things, and go back to something Ashley said and Jeremiah said, planning is huge, right? I think a lot of times, be it an infrastructure issue or be it a business that's like, man, this is a integral part of our community, but John and Sue that own it, they're getting up in age and we don't know if there's anyone that's going to take it over. Having that can we just talk a little bit more about that and kind of what you experienced there in regards to that? And I know it's a little separate from this conversation, but I think it honestly isn't, because it is the business council. It is our future economically. What did that look like? What did you guys come up with in the end? I know you mentioned real quick chambers having kind of a list of businesses, but can you kind of just maybe flesh a little more on that for me?
Sure. Mr. Co-Chair, Representative Harrelson. So what ended up happening was, because it all boils down to money, and I'm a money guy. And so, but what happened was the University of Montana received funds for economic development, and that's what they decided to devote those funds to. And so I believe it was 50,000. Please don't quote me on that. But they said, okay, well, we have our army of all of these folks. Like I said, the tribes, the economic developers, the city administrators, all went out and they said, we would really like to maintain our young people here, and we want to provide opportunities. So we're going to take this 50,000, which is a drop in the bucket, maybe less than a drop. And how can we get the most mileage out of this? And so they really wanted to focus on providing a place where it would be an online marketplace. I don't know how else to say it, but basically they then left it up to the tribal leaders, the city chambers, whoever it may be, to kind of work with those businesses and get them out there, enlist them. And so I think that I don't know what kind of success they've had, honestly, with playing connector like that. But I'll tell you from my time at the Business Council, that was a lot of the job, was playing connector, hooking up the right people with someone else that could help. And so I think I was very appreciative, because I think the demographics of Montana are similar to us. And I think that we have the same rural struggles. We have the same, I think, even kind of just mode of thinking amongst the people. And so I was happy to see that. And I thought that we've kind of put a couple of those pieces in now, I think, to really, and it's not going to solve it all. I know it's not. Kids are going to leave. But my target market idea was that we would try to provide something that would try to help those folks that do want to stay here, like some of us did, and provide an opportunity for those folks. So.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So just to follow up, when you say almost a marketplace of sorts, you're talking about individual A, family business wants to sell that business. It's no one in the family is going to take this over, wants to sell that business. You're creating almost a network of sorts, or the idea was a network of sorts to connect the business owner with an up and coming family or a young person in our state to take that over. Am I correct in that?
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, correct. Or even a competitor. If they, somebody's retiring, and when we did the succession loan program, the idea was that I think when I was a banker, 90% of those takeovers, they wanted to sell it to their manager, their floor manager, shop manager. Unfortunately, though, that person typically does not have the capacity to cover the blue sky. And so most often that business just shuts down, because most owners don't want to do an owner carry or any kind of buyback agreement. They just want to be done, and I'm retired. And so I think that if there was a way to show those opportunities in a marketplace online or wherever it is, that could create an opportunity for others to have a chance, and not just maybe shop managers that know it, but I think that there's plenty of people always with expertise out in the community that have a desire to do something different. I read a crazy statistic the other day that something like 70% of workers don't work in the field that their degree is in. So I think that that creates an opportunity for others. So.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Keefe. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Thank you for being here. Any other public comments before we close public comment? Any online? All right, we'll close public comment. Any discussion? Talking points? What's the key takeaways on the Wyoming Business Council here? Representative Pendergraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to say I found this discussion very helpful. Believe it will help to make better, sound decisions. And I regret that it was not better attended.
Representative Riggins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the self-evaluation that the Business Council did. There is still a cost of maintaining a program, even if you're not spending a nickel on it. You know, it's always in the paperwork. It's always got to be reexamined. So I appreciate that. And I like the discussion, how we pinned down what some of these programs actually did. Like the gentleman just spoke about the financing struggles, owner occupied older buildings. I'm just thinking, oh, the entire downtown Laramie. Sorry about that. So anyway, I thought this was very worthwhile discussion, because this is the last minerals meeting I'll have, and I won't have a discussion about these topics until the session starts. And so I think people think that we get to talk a lot between one another. That is not true. You have lives after this, and you don't get to visit about these subjects. You don't get to say, time out, let's take 30 minutes to discuss this. So I was grateful. I was already here, and I appreciated the opportunity for this discussion.
Thank you, Representative. Any other points? Any other conversations? Yes, Representative Harrelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So one question, and I might go back to our legal staff on this, and I'm sorry to bring you back up, but we've got two kind of avenues when it comes to the BRC. Obviously, there's the potential repeal that could come in. But if there isn't a repeal, there is that legislative oversight conversation coming in with 44. You mentioned that the mineral committees did as well, but they didn't actually do a lot of language on it, just basically saying there will be. But I also look at state broadband, and I know we have legislative oversight on state broadband currently. So in the minerals committee bill, would this potentially add more legislative oversight? So we would still have legislative oversight over the state broadband, as well as legislative oversight over Wyoming Business Council. Am I off base on that?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, the minerals draft did not change any of the language in the broadband concerning those, the liaisons. It did add a sentence in a more general statute in Article 1 that just provides for legislative liaisons of the Business Council. That minerals draft, though, does not expand any further beyond that single sentence, as compared to, say, 27 LSO 44, the Joint Appropriations draft, which goes into a lot more detail about the liaisons and what they are able to do in terms of, serving as liaisons for the Business Council.
Yes, follow up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Fuller, thank you. That single line, is that backed up in statute elsewhere so it's clear, or do you believe that that could create, because I think, are they paid? Are they not paid? How long do they serve? Who appoints them? Is it a deal where someone, I mean, obviously we would believe the president or the speaker would, but we don't have that declared. Do we have proof throughout statute that would dictate how that would be handled, or is there is it a little thin in that area? I just was wondering.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Harrelson, I'd have to look maybe at some of the other, languages where, we have said, they're legislative liaisons. I think with that sentence just saying they're legislative liaisons, it all of those questions you raised, in my mind would be unclear, and maybe up to, first the presiding officers, but then I think also the business council, and how, how they would proceed in that regard as well.
Okay, turn it over to Chairman Bear for any closing comments.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do appreciate Representative Reagan's comments. I think this was an exercise that was useful. On the continuing effort on the JAC side, I know we're going to implement planning into our bill. And we heard your committee, as far as how you came to the dollar amount. We'll take that into account as we continue to debate the dollar amount that we would apply to the ongoing funding. I hope that it's been valuable to the entire committee and the public in regards to, again, why we landed on the continuing funding model that we did. I hope that there was some influence over the Minerals Committee, because you have finished your actions on these bills that will be carried on into the 69th. Those changes maybe have to do with things like the reversion of the funds that are not used in a particular year, as well as the ongoing funding. So I appreciate all the conversations and also the BRC issue. And so appreciate the time and the committee members that were here today.
Thank you. Committee members, I appreciate you being here today. I think it's been well worth our time. We've learned some things. Appreciate LSO, all their efforts. We've had a heavy lift during the interim. These two topics, the community grant program, as well as amendments to the Wyoming Business Council, those were both heavy lifts. But I think what we're doing here and what we've done for the interim, they can be a lasting legacy. This consensus block grant program, I'm just so excited about that, because it allows our communities to take care of some of the infrastructure. That's one of the overriding concerns I've heard, is how do we take care of our streets, our wastewater treatment plant? How can we attract businesses when we got potholes in our streets? And this gives an opportunity for continuous funding long past the time when we serve here in the legislature. It will be a legacy for our future generations. So I envision both of these 4 or 5 bills that we've talked about, they'll all see some changes in the next few months until they become law. They're not done yet, but this is a step in the right direction, finding out what the differences are between the two committees and trying to resolve some of those ideas, so that when it does come to the floor, everyone can get behind these. I appreciate you being here. Appreciate the Minerals Committee, Joint Minerals Committee. This is our last meeting for interim. I know you've spent a lot of time away from family and away from your businesses to be here working on behalf of the state of Wyoming and her citizens. I'd encourage everyone to turn in their legislative reimbursement forms so we can get that to LSO. But last of all, I want to thank LSO for their dedication, their time, their service, and for all of the support that they give us behind the scenes as we have tried to do what we thought is best for the state of Wyoming. So thank you very much, LSO, for your endeavors. Yes.
And Mr. Chairman, just one matter of housekeeping for the joint minerals. We will hand out those forms to you here in a minute.
Okay. All right. All right. With that, we will adjourn.